Hello, Nemblong me, Johnson Raira. Thank you to Mars for joining us for another episode of The Pacific.
Malo le soifua olo uingo o Alice Lolo here.
Coming up on the show, we're on the streets of Port Moresby in PNG to see how people are getting by after a tough start to the year.
And we'll be serenaded by these Pacific and First Nations artists at the Wantok Music Sing Sing.
And of course, Solomon Islanders have gone to the polls. We heard all about what was at stake last episode, and we'll be going back to Honiara shortly to hear all about what happens next.
But before we go back to the Happy Isles, Johns, you've been in Samoa.
I have, and it's a country famous for many things. Tatau, Manu Samoa rugby team, the Mao movement.
Opelonge weightlifting family?
Yes, them too. But it's also home to some of the Pacific's biggest and most expensive churches.
How expensive are we talking here?
Wow. Some of them cost millions of dollars, and they're definitely beautiful. But the thing is, they're paid for mainly by donations from worshippers. And for some, it can be a serious financial burden. So I was in Samoa to find out the price of spirituality.
Samoan people have a lot of belief in God. There's more than one church building in every village.
Samoa is famous for its churches.
There are churches popping up every day. There are villages that have 7 or 8 churches.
Not just the sheer number of them, but their size and unique designs.
We are very independent and very Samoan, where they claim their own spirituality.
They also come with a massive price tag, paid for mostly by donations from churchgoers. Roughly around 20,000 Australian dollars that you have contributed to your church. Is it too much? Church and God are like family. They are at the heart of contemporary Samoan culture. But the price being extracted to bring glory to God is becoming a burden for some. We are arriving at one of Samoa's newest churches. Reportedly worth 13 million tala. Hopefully, the priest or chairman from the church will speak to us. Hello, talofa. I'm Johnson from ABC Australia. So are we okay to film this afternoon? And
No, we have to
discuss what we're going to talk about. That's fine. That's totally fine. Speaking about the church and posing difficult questions is understandably a sensitive topic here. Eventually, I was allowed in for a Sunday Mass at the exquisite church of St. Teresa of the Child Jesus in the village of Lepea. The interior is nothing short of magnificent. 46 stained glass windows were shipped in from New Zealand at a cost of $10,000 each. The ceiling is adorned by Samoan and Pacific designs, and the statues were hand-carved and painted by Father Ricky Bernard. If you don't mind, how much are we talking in terms of cash that was needed to get this up and going?
Yes, the budget was 13,800,000 tala, and the actual cost was 13.3 million.
It took 8 years to build and was delayed because of the pandemic. It was mostly funded by the congregation. Does it put too much pressure on families though?
Yes, it is, but it's through faith that we rely on the faith of each community member. Otherwise, there's nobody else that we can rely on.
Salosa John Arching is the church chair. I wanted to know why the parish felt it necessary to build a church on such a grand scale.
If we believe that God asked us to build this church, then we are more or less instrument of Him to just build a church. We build it for the Lord. We build it for the redemption of souls. The more souls we gather, that's our reward. We didn't know the church was going to be this big. And we didn't know it was going to be this beautiful.
Well, that's expensive.
And we didn't know it was going to be this expensive. We didn't know that.
Sunday morning in the capital Apia. In a poor land where the working wage is as low as $2 a day, the great extravagance is Christian worship.
Samoans have a long history of donating generously to their church.
If the Samoans have little, they give what little they have in order to worship in style.
Prior to World War II, copra, or white coconut flesh, was an important source of income. Churchgoers would harvest the copra for the clergy, who would process it to sell. It was around this time where churches started to be built on a grand scale.
The cash that came with American Marines ended up in church because people wanted to give the best. The best they had was cash.
Perhaps the most visited church in Samoa, the Immaculate Conception Cathedral in central Apia, cost $7.1 million to refurbish in 2014. The more modern-looking Samoa Worship Centre opened in 2022 at a cost of $11 million. And the Jubilee Church building at Malua, belonging to the Congregational Christian Church of Samoa, or E Whakasa, cost $9.3 million. But the financial obligations can weigh heavily on those donating. Some parishes ask their congregations to buy and then sell tickets for raffles, which they call bingo.
I've been around this place for a long time to actually see that there is definitely a problem. And we have been trying to work with churches, but I find that, it's more, they look at the bingo and all that jazz.
In Melbourne, a Samoan mother who we've chosen not to identify sends money back to Samoa for her family church every week.
Donations to the church is something of a privilege, and it's an honour for me.
How much money are we talking about that you send back home to Samoa?
In our church back in Samoa, they do the bingo fundraising every week. So each family is given 10 packages to sell of bingo. So that 10 packets is $20 per package. So it's $200.
Let me do some quick maths. So that's 200 times 52 per year. So that's 10,400 tala per year. Times that by 4. It's 41,600 tala. Roughly around 20,000 Australian dollars.
I feel that it's a lot. That much can do so much for my family. Let me say, it's hard. We feel we're facing so much difficulty financially. We, for example, are trying to pay the mortgage. We have families. We have 12 kids to look after, trying to send money home every week. My Samoan family, I will say, this is how we say in Samoa, awa le avea le mea e leo ia oi. Don't give what you don't have, right? Just give what you have.
While churches keep asking for donations, some aren't returning the favour.
Some of our clergy are not really attuned to what is happening. They don't know that our women are suffering violence. They don't know that our youth are falling into the cracks of society. But I think that is where the church should come in. Is the church doing enough? No, they're not. We continue to struggle, and there should be a change.
The chairman of Samoa's National Council of Churches told us that while he doesn't represent every parish, he doesn't believe anyone is being forced to donate. He said people should not give money if they don't have it, and that large, expensive churches are made to create a beautiful place of worship to love God. Nonetheless, the church remains a key pillar in Samoan society. It isn't perfect, and it's clear there's an imbalance in the relationship for some, but the spirit of community and mutual support endures, testament to a faith deeply interwoven with Samoa.
In the Pacific context, no man is an island. We grew up in a community, and we live as a community, and we do things as a community. And that's the fellowship of all the people. This is their house of worship. And I think coming together it's better than praying alone.
Okay, to the election everyone is talking about now. In our last episode, Chris and Rita took us across Solomon Islands to hear from voters and candidates and really give us an understanding of what's at stake in the country's elections. It's the first vote since the diplomatic switch to China, which means all eyes are on the Happy Isles. There were lively parades around the capital as supporters came out to back their preferred candidates. Around 300 candidates are jockeying for 50 parliamentary seats in the national parliament, and over 800 provincial candidates are competing for seats in the provincial assemblies.
It's an exciting day indeed for every Solomon Islander, and me also. I just cast my vote, and I'm hoping and I'm excited to see my candidate won on this election.
But there are some notable issues with elections here. The night before the vote is known as Devil's Night, a time when some candidates gather support through bribery and vote buying. Another challenge for voters, they must return to their home provinces to vote. Ferries and ships were heaving under the sheer number of people. Transport is often paid and provided for by the candidates themselves. Of the 334 candidates up for national elections, 115 are contesting as independents, and it's most likely they'll outnumber MPs from political parties, meaning they could be the kingmakers. And now the negotiations will be underway, with the big players like Prime Minister Manasseh Sogavare vying for support to form government.
So, will the Happy Isles see a new government, or will it be 4 more years for Manasseh Sogavare? We have Pacific Beat's Evan Wasuka and Solomon Islands reporter Chris and Rita Almanu Leong from Honiara right now. Hello you, Evan and Chrissy.
Hey, hello.
Hello.
So you've both been out to vote. Chrissy, you went back to Malaita. How was it all?
Well, it went out really well. So many people outside of Honiara also made that trip. Almost 80% of the voters come from outside of Honiara, so people have been going back in boats. I also traveled 6 hours to get to my village and 6 hours back, so not bad. 12 hours out at sea, Johnson, just to cast my vote.
We're probably a long way off knowing who will form government, but what's the vibe been like, especially for you, Evan, travelling from Australia and going back home to vote?
Well, it's been great to be back here in Honiara for the elections. I didn't have as much travel as Chrissy did to get to the voting booth. I did mine around East Honiara, which is on the eastern part of the capital. So far, very peaceful, and yeah, really good to see lots of people out and about and participating in the voting system.
Now, it was thought that Manasseh Sogavare faced a stiff challenge in his seat in the far northwest of the country. And how true is this? And is there any indication that this could be another 4-year term for Mr. Sogavare?
Well, at this stage, Johns, these are all rumors. I think the most important thing here is that the people get to choose who their leaders would be it Sogavare, be it whoever they think would be the best leader. As the results will come out, we'll be able to be in a better position to tell you whether he's still back in his constituency and what happens next.
Yeah, John, it's still pretty early days yet in terms of the counting and the whole process towards forming the new government. That could take some time. But what we do know is that Choiseul province, which is where the Prime Minister is, that's among one of the first national seats that will be counted. So we'll definitely know if Manasseh Sogavare is coming back, if he's made that cross in defeating his opponents and coming back for that seat. Then the next step is the government formation period.
Let's take a look now at another big talking point, and that's the big C word, and that's China. A lot has been said about their relationship with Solomon Islands, but we saw in last week's election special covered by you, Chrissy, that it's not something people always talk about on the ground or even care about.
Yes, well, China it was one of the big things we heard leading up to the elections. Across the coverage so far, we've seen that there's been lots of other issues like healthcare, education, employment for youth. Those issues have come up. But even yesterday when I was doing my interviews on the ground, some voters also raised this prospect about China and the geopolitics of it. So it's there at the back of people's mind, but it's probably not one of the key concerns I've seen so far. Yeah.
Now, earlier we briefly mentioned the Devil's Night, vote buying, etc. But has there been any progress made in recent years when it comes to clean elections? Because it seems like from the news articles that I've seen and in social media, it seems like things have run fairly smoothly. Is that right, Chrissy?
Well, back in Malaita, where I was on Devil's Night, things seem to have settled there. There was no campaigning happening. So at that remote level, people do know what is meant, or when it comes to the Devil's Night or the campaign blackout. But Evan was telling me that this has just recently happened, right, Evan?
Yeah, so you've got this campaign period blackout, which prevents any form of campaigning right in the lead up to the election. So that's sort of come in place to help try and remove those type of events like the Devil's Night, which we've seen in the past. This time around, it's been really, really quiet. There's been no movement or campaigning right up until the 24-hour period before the start of the national elections.
Now, before I let you go, just so everyone is clear, what is the next steps with the vote count and how soon will the Electoral Office announce any results?
The counting is about to start. I think it started in some places across the country. The exact length of time, the Electoral Commission is thinking 1.5 weeks, up to 2 weeks, for all the results to be tallied. We're expecting the provincial ones to come in first because there's less numbers there, and then the national ones. But as I was saying, the seat where the Prime Minister is expected to be one of the first. So it's just a matter of wait and see.
And also for the Prime Minister one, that will take over 4 weeks after these results come in.
Now, I'm sure we can count on you both to keep your finger on the pulse when it comes to more election updates. But Evan and Chrissy, it's been a pleasure talking to you both today. Thank you, Tomas.
Thank you, Tomas.
Thank you, Johns.
Let's head next door to Papua New Guinea now, where it's been a challenging start to the year. In January, deadly riots killed more than 20 people and widespread unrest caused hundreds of millions of dollars in damage to businesses. Now, uncertainty over the country's fuel supply has business owners worried. Papua New Guinea reporter Belinda Korda takes to the streets of Port Moresby to hear about how everyday people are getting by, their struggles and their hopes.
Riots, unrest, fuel shortages, political upheaval. It's certainly been a rough few months in Papua New Guinea. With the rising cost of living and inflation, many in the capital are struggling.
The economic impact is clear to see here at Port Moresby's busy Boroko market, where many of the city residents come here to buy their essentials.
Morning, you're right.
Yes, me alright.
Jacinta's been working here at the market for 7 years.
So me look at life from me, I'm hard like so. Time Mr. Laos na me aram sem. Also what was the sister been talking. Boroko market been open, so me come mix one plus space. Me sit down now me market. So me market 2017 come now, come lo na me lo so 2019 na COVID been back him now. Me pla lucy market na me pla go back in.
Even since the markets reopened, Jacinta's barely staying afloat.
Customer no buy. So money was a miss spend him 300 kina lo buy one back kai also cost him was 300 120 130 na miss afford this all kai na come line him or customer no buy. So this all money blow me am fire. People are thinking school beginning, people are thinking house, next time people are bus fare, people are come buy KG, and this time life am go. People are feeling myself hard like me play. So what me play holy mem. Sometimes me play by losing market, miss a losing market style house, depend on financial problem.
It's the same story for mother of two, Erica, who says she often has no choice but to borrow money from loan sharks.
Miss giving back money doll. But
Sambat time also nogat na bod masem ba stop natin laos ko na sem mi kat sambat sa friends so family na bod ba mi ko asking mo na sem misa backhead backends lang ini.
January 10th was a reminder of the risks of doing business here as thousands of people stormed shops, looted and burned stores to the ground.
Stop and Shop is officially on fire.
Police officers walking off the job to protest issues with their pay are believed to have sparked the unrest. In the aftermath, Prime Minister James Marape said businesses had lost more than 200 million Australian dollars. One of the city's main supermarket and pharmacy chains sustained more than 40 million Australian dollars in damages, and 2 stores were destroyed. While the business is slowly recovering, many of their shops may not reopen.
You suddenly faced with a business that's lost 1/3 of the revenue. Yeah. So it's had a huge and devastating impact on the business as a whole. We had to provide counseling services for more than 300 staff because emotionally they were so badly affected by this. A lot of them on that day thought they were not going to survive the event.
Aside from the emotional scars, hundreds of CPL staff had to be redeployed. Soon after the riots, the government began work on an assistance package. Months later, this CPL store was the first recipient, but lots more are still pleading for money to compensate damages.
The suppliers need a payment to survive too. It's a roll-on impact. If we don't pay the suppliers, they start to struggle.
There's also frustration. Those responsible have largely avoided punishment. Despite arrests, a slow and fractured justice system hasn't brought any alleged looters to trial. And as for politics, Prime Minister James Marape's so far evaded threats of a no-confidence vote. Meanwhile, the annual inflation rate is sitting at 5%.
This is about cost of living pressures that Papua New Guinean families are facing today.
A few months ago, the country's main fuel supplier, Puma Energy, closed temporarily, sparking fears of a national crisis. The government scrambled to shore up supply.
So we have to go in a queue.
For the country's taxi drivers already competing in a crowded market, fuel issues are an added frustration.
So we have to try hard and hard during the day. Even some of us, we don't sleep, we walk in the night. In the afternoon, we eat and stay at home, and then when the time hits up to 7, 8 o'clock, we come out on road again.
With still more recent price hikes, these drivers face escalating challenges. But like everyone else we spoke to, Paul says he's finding ways to survive.
My kids are educated, they have to go to the school, I have to give their allowance money, and this one I have to think first. So when I run the cab, I have to put some money for my kids, my food's at home.
Back at the market, sellers are getting on with things. And amidst the hardship are stories of resilience, survival, and hope.
Especially me all mama, all women's. Kind of some example, SMA group mama or association. Time plus style association. Me pla style association and pla right one pla pass or this law government must look silo me pla. Supporting me pla SMA work pla me pla, market work pla me pla so. Misa feel mo siya. Misa find hard but hemorrhage them life yeah. Bami kago garden blemi so bami go where Misa still stuff yet.
Some powerful stories there and a lot of resilience from our Wantoks in Port Moresby.
We're now going to end the show with some more inspirational Melanesians.
The Sing Sing Ensemble is a world-famous crew of Pacific musicians.
16 of them from PNG, Solomon Islands, Vanuatu and Australia were in Melbourne for the Wantok Sing Sing concert.
We'll see you next week, but before we go, here's the crew as they prepare and perform.
Sing Sing begins in the villages. Everyone use their voices every day, singing different tunes in different occasions.
That's just a collaboration, really. To me, the Sing Sing gives the opportunity for artists from around the Pacific, especially, and First Nations artists here in Australia to come together.
1, 2. To be able to showcase Melanesian First Nations music. It's a real privilege, and I'm just soaking in everything because I can't believe that I'm able to do this with such amazing musicians and people.
So Black Butterfly is on the bench? Most of the artists release records on Wantok Music or friends and acquaintances from our immediate region. So there's 2 First Nation artists in Frankhammer and Radical Sun, and artists from Solomons, Vanuatu, Papua New Guinea and West Papua as well. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Something terrible in Papua New Guinea today, yeah?
George missing his flights, the humour kind of went out of me for that. It was a massive headache, and we're still trying to get him in, but yeah, there's been 5 flights he's been bumped off, and then everybody here was just dying to perform with him. He's one of the most important elders of our region.
Wait, okay.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.
Looking around the room, practicing with some of the names, I find it really privileged to play with Frank Yama.
I know everyone is beautiful people and they got stories to tell. I'm into connections and learning and sharing.
Music is ingrained in my family and my culture. My mother is Christine Anu. It's definitely a full circle moment to work with Wantok and David Bridie, because he's been a part of the Anu clan family for 30 odd years. I'd say like about 35 years now.
Zippy, wonderful.
Wunderbar.
Wunderbar.
I'm hearing these guys live for the first time. And I'm a fan, using the traditional instruments as well. It's been a treat for us all.
Chup chup simbe, simbe tang li tang, simbe tang li tang. Or mambe o sare o, mambe o, mambe o, or mambe sare o, mambe me sare o, or mambe o sare o, mambe o. Mambe, oh.